Hello? Okay, hello. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out today, and for those of you tuning in remotely, and thank you for joining us for the second of 4 events for this year's Native Arts Speaker Series, Cultural Currents Mentorship in Native Arts. We're so excited to have Nora and Margarita here with us today. I think it's going to be an incredible talk, so I won't take up too much of your time. I'm just going to do brief introductions, and then I'll turn things over. So Nora Naranjo Morse from Santa Clara, Pueblo, was born and raised in northern New Mexico. She's a contemporary artist who energizes Pueblo ancestral sensibility into her art, using earth-based materials to create large public art installations. One of Nora's public art pieces is at the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C. She also works in a number of media. She is a hands-on learner and educator. Her public art piece at the National Museum of the American Indian, Always Becoming, in many ways exemplifies Nora's leadership. Always Becoming is interactive, collaborative, and needs yearly collective tending. Nora widens the circle of collaboration by sharing her art process and cultural information with others in her community and beyond. She lives on Capo tribal land in an adobe house she helped to build. Please welcome Nora Naranjo Morse. Margarita Paz Pedro was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico, raised in Las Cruces, and with family in Laguna, Pueblo. Margarita has ties across the state. Her background, Mexican-American, Laguna, and Santa Clara, is core to her art making. She is a ceramic artist, teacher, organizer, and muralist. She received her BFA with an emphasis in ceramics in 2003 from the University of Colorado Boulder, an MA in art education in 2008 at the University of New Mexico, and an MFA in studio arts integrated practice from the Institute of American Indian Arts in 2023. She has been able to travel, participate in artist residencies, and study under some fierce female artists. Since 2009, Margarita has worked as lead artist with the Alma Summer Institute, creating large-scale public art mosaic murals across New Mexico. She is currently an adjunct professor in ceramics, where she can reciprocate the knowledge that has been given and shared with her and to others. She is a partner to a fellow artist, and together they have a rowdy 11-year-old. Please welcome Margarita. So I'm going to turn things over to Nora and Margarita, and then at the end of their presentation, we'll take questions from the audience. If you're watching at home and you have a question, please feel free to type it in. We have somebody monitoring the chat. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Margarita and I have been working together for, 3 years now?
3 years.
Yeah, and we sort of found each other thanks to Mario, who's in the audience at the IAIA, who put us together, and that was just the perfect thing to do, Mario, because what I found out immediately was that Margarita is part Santa Clara, and she was interested in reconnecting to Santa Clara through the process of creating clay works from our Santa Clara older tradition of clay making. So we started working together, and we haven't stopped. And so what we're going to do today is show you the kinds of things that we've been collaborating on. And thanks to the Grounded in Clay grant, we've been able to work together for the past 2 or 3 years, pretty consistently. And there's a lot to tell you, so I'll just start. This is a picture of a piece that was done in the 1930s. It is a Depression-era Thunderbird necklace. And, you know, when the Depression happened, Native people, especially the Pueblo people down, our neighbors down to the south, didn't have money to buy silver or turquoise. So, wow, because of their survival skills, they looked to the ground and they saw old RPM records, they saw combs that were broken, anything that was plastic, they used incorporated into their process. And you can see that here. I think the red was an old toothbrush. And so the idea of surviving, our survival skills as Indigenous people is just off the charts. And I'm always inspired by the way Indigenous people find ways to circumvent the challenges and find ways to, and actually are stimulated by their need to survive and what they come up with. So I find that very inspiring to me. And I know all of these pictures are going to seem very random, but they all make sense at the end. This is a very familiar along the Rio Grande, especially in the fall. There are all of these stands, and I don't know if all of you are from New Mexico here? Yeah. So you're familiar, yeah. You're familiar with the chili stands that dot along the Rio Grande. I frequent them often, especially in the fall. And you know, in the Espanola Valley where I'm from, you can even smell the chili in the air, and I just love that smell. So I had a realization here, and that realization was that the bags that transport chili from Hatch, New Mexico, and Hatch, New Mexico is the chili capital of the world, I'll have you know. And Hatch is about 30 miles maybe from Las Cruces, yeah. So I realized that these bags, after they were done transporting chili up this way, would then eventually sometimes get thrown out. And when I saw that, my ancestral influence sort of kicked in, and I started, and I can't tell you why I chose chili bags to start collecting. So I started collecting chili bags, and that would otherwise get burned. And then COVID hit, and everybody was thrown into isolation. And so I had all of these chili bags in my studio, so I started experimenting with the material. And what I quickly found out is this material, burlap, is a very porous material. And in some ways, it's very similar to the monk's cloth that's used to make ceremonial dress in our communities. And I have two sisters who are excellent embroiderers on monk's cloth. And so I went to them and I asked them if they would be able to help me sew on burlap. And in the meantime, because I had so much time in isolation, I started dyeing burlap. And I started playing with what that material was able to do for me. And it was really interesting because I didn't really have any preconceived notion of what I was about to make. But I just knew that I had this real idea that something was going to come out of this. In the meantime, I became very conscious of how our society purchases and discards without too much care. And I wanted to take a look at that. And because I had so much time during COVID, then there was a lot of time to be able to experiment and to research and to think about these things that was happening in our society, in our local communities and beyond. So what happened is, I'm going to stand up and show you. The armature of this piece, which I think from head to the top of the head is about 16 feet, and I then needed a stronger armature to build onto. So I went to my local dump and started collecting fencing wire, old fencing wire, chicken wire, whatever kind of metal I could find that was somewhat bendable. I made a person sitting down, and then I started covering it with this burlap. I had been experimenting with dyes and things like that. Then I went to my sisters and I asked them, you know, help me sew this kind of material. And of course they were on board. And we started sewing together. It was like I started gathering these people to help me with this idea that I had. Then I got another idea. And that idea was that, we've been so isolated for so long that I felt a real need to reconnect to not only my community, but to other people. I wrote a grant and was awarded some money to invite people into my studio and start helping me make these sculptures. And because of that, I met Margarita. And the project was called Gather. And before you know it, there were all of these women that I started engaging with, and we started meeting and somewhat regularly. And we sort of became like an art posse. We'd go to different people's studios and we'd help people out who needed somebody to sew or to just sit around and talk with each other and reconnect. And so it became really kind of a beautiful movement for people who were wanting to re-engage. This young woman is now at IAIA. She's in her second year, right? Maybe third year. So this is not an unusual thing for Pueblo women. This is a picture to the left, there's a picture of my family. I have 6 sisters, and I had six sisters. And we were all one day baking bread. We had just harvested a field of corn, and so we were all also baking corn in the pante. So the idea of working together seems to be a part of my DNA at this point. Then it goes beyond that to new generations. This is my niece helping her aunt. We're doing the corn. My eldest sister would come out and make sure we tied the corn correctly. So that was a real way of gathering together to sit and talk and to gossip and do whatever women do in a sewing circle and working together. I carry that information that I've always known into my art process. And this is in DC, the Always Becoming project, where I took mud, straw, and sand to Washington, DC, and made 5 ephemeral sculptures, and invited people to come and help build these sculptures that will eventually slowly melt back into the ground. And traditionally, that's what people would do when a vessel, in the Pueblos, when a vessel was no longer used for utilitarian purposes, they were cracked, or we'd put them outside and they would eventually melt back into the ground. I brought that idea to these large sculptures in DC. And here there are people learning how to just work with mud. It was really interesting because it was the summer, and in the place that Always Becoming is located on the NMAI grounds, I think about, in that corridor, there are about 1 million people that go back and forth yearly. And so there were people who were coming and asking, what is this? Is this a bathroom? Is this, what are you doing? And it was really interesting because we also had to stop and inform people of the kind of things we were doing. And Always Becoming is about community, it's about environment, and it's about culture. And those things are really implanted in these sculptures. Well, and I'm going to go back and visit them the end of this month. The Gather project included reaching out to younger people. And so one morning we had a printing workshop with little kids, and we had Jameson, what's his name? Banks, who was an instructor at IAIA in printmaking, and he sort of helped us reach younger kids who were very into it. I think it's important in moving our culture forward with these principles that we hold so carefully in our communities, that they are transmitted to our children. Like I was given that information. I want to make sure that new generations of Pueblo women, other younger indigenous people have that sense of this community and exchange and traditional knowledge being given to different generations. With that, Margarita and I took our daughters, granddaughters and her daughter to up in near Picaris, where there is a clay deposit that my mother showed me where this clay deposit is. So that information becomes very intergenerational. And we collected clay. And that day was pretty important because it was so beautiful. And the next generation of young, possibly potters, were very excited because when you go there, you realize that you are connected to even the birds singing or the trees, and you get that sense, and it's not in a screen, it's very tactile, this experience of working with clay. And so we had that beautiful day. I still think about that. I think we showed this to you already, right? But it's okay.
And this was a couple years ago. They already look so grown now.
Yeah, we were talking about that. They're big girls now. And I think in this process, there is a whole approach, a cultural approach to how you communicate with the clay process, and it starts here. And I think in that you learn the respect about the environment, the resources of the environment, and how you approach that relationship. So Margarita is, and she can tell you more about herself. Margarita is smart. Oh man. And I like hanging with her because our collaboration is not one-sided. I'm not just teaching her something. She's teaching me all the time in her technique about how she deals with clay and how she approaches it, her techniques, because she deals with a completely different clay. And when she and I started working together, she was interested in reconnecting through this clay process to maybe Santa Clara, Pueblo again, through her father's side. And I was very more than willing to be a part of that process. honored, actually. The project of Gather was pretty wide open. I was also working on the large sculptures at the same time. Margarita and I were working in clay together. And there were other young women who came and worked, and then after a while, they were teaching each other. And in this case, one young woman was teaching another woman from Mexico how to sew on a machine. There was a young woman, Benet, from, where was she from?
Wisconsin?
Yeah, I think she was from Wisconsin. She was Bemidji, Wisconsin, is that?
I don't remember.
Yeah. So she came down here to be a part of the Gathering project, and it was, she wanted to learn about clay, and we're still in contact with each other. Again, we fired together. We went through the whole process of gathering clay, making it, and firing it together. Comes back to these very basic ways of that our people knew very well and continued. This picture, I think, was taken in the early 1900s. Don't you? Isn't that beautiful? And there we are, still doing the same thing. So Margarita's going to tell you about her work.
Hello, everybody. So, I do believe that we're put on certain paths and we're meant to meet certain people in our lives. And I felt like I met Nora in 2000 through her book and through doing research as a newly person working in clay and looking like what other Pueblo women are doing clay. And her work would pop up constantly. And then visiting different collections, in different museums that I was able to attend, I would see it again and again. And then I moved back to New Mexico in 2003, and that's around the time when the Cuarto Centenario was happening, the 400 years of Spain arrival, and the whole public art project that was happening at that time in Albuquerque. And I knew there was something going on behind the scenes, but I didn't have the inside scoop until recently. Then, fast forward to 20 years later, when I was in the MFA program through IAIA, and she was looking for an apprentice, and I was really interested, but I try and do too many things, so I didn't have enough time in my schedule when I was first asked, but then I was asked again, and it was like, okay, I found some holes, let's squeeze it in these days in the summertime for a month. And so I would drive up to Santa Clara from Albuquerque for about a month, and we got to hang out and learn a lot. But thinking about mentorship and apprenticeship, I've been able to be on both sides of it. And I'm a lead artist and mentor for an organization called Alma, and we make large-scale ceramic tile murals across Albuquerque, across New Mexico, actually. And so as one of the lead artists, we guide young people through the whole process of creating a public work of art. We do research, community engagement, we draw the design, we draw the design to scale, we carve and cut each tile by hand, we glaze, we fire, we install, and we grout. And so it's pretty labor intensive, but they're well paid. And then they have this pride in having a hand in this project that we say lasts forever, or at least my forever. I'm also an educator. I've taught high school for 13-ish years. I now teach college and various workshops. So I feel like I'm a lifelong learner, and I truly enjoy sharing what I learn from others or what I'm learning to others. And then I still enjoy, learning from people who've been working in this area for years. Nora's always been really generous with her knowledge and her experiences in this decades-long art career and the different life lessons that she sprinkles in there. She's a clay person. I'm a clay person. So when we were like, what should we do? I was like, let's work in clay. How about some Santa Clara clay? So I feel like working in different clays is like getting to know a new person, and both was happening at the same time. I was getting to know her and the material. And it takes observation and questioning, listening, time, all while getting to know the person with those same things. It's not just about the work, but also the relationship that's happening. And our month of working together flew by. And it was like, I don't want it to end. And I think we had that mutual feeling like, well, let's keep going. And so this is just some examples of the left side is work that I do. I do wheel thrown functional porcelain works, stoneware works. I do photo transfer from historic archives, kind of collaged on there. And then the works on the right are the ones I did while working with Nora in that month-long apprenticeship. And so the works that I did do with her were put into my final exhibition for my MFA thesis work. And it was included adobe structures, different kinds of clay, mural painting, all arranged. And this was at the Co in 2023. For me, first she taught me about working with the clay in the way that she's learned from her family, generations of potters, which blows my mind. We built together, our families hung out. So my daughter was 9, and she had 2 young granddaughters, and there's a trampoline on the premises. So they would all just disappear and then reappear and then just be like running around. And I come from Albuquerque, and I'm like, don't go outside, just kidding. But, don't go to your neighbors or let me watch you. But it's safer. It felt way safer in that spot where you're like, okay, you can go run around. So thinking about the research that we've been doing, beyond learning the clay is kind of a lot of experimenting. We were like, can you do photo transfers on natural clay? How do you go about it? Do we have any answers? Maybe. We're still experimenting. Some things work, some things don't. Sometimes it works that one time, but then it didn't work again when we tried. But it's the nature of the material. It thinks you got it figured out, and then it's like, haha, keep trying. But it's been fun. And it's led to other conversations and other projects and other research. Like we both love, I feel like, photo archives. Yeah. And we're like, let's just go spend time at the state archive and digging through all those old photos. So it wasn't just about getting to know a new clay, but a person. And then the reconnection with Santa Clara. My grandma was Santa Clara, but she moved away when she was young to go to Indian school and never came back. So her knowledge and connections were severed, and it was like the reconnection was through Nora and through the material and this path that I know somebody put out there for me. But I enjoy both roles of being a mentor and an apprentice or a mentee, especially when it has the feeling of family. Mm-hmm. This way of learning and sharing is like super valuable. Like you can't pay for this. You can't find curriculum that covers this. And so I can never not say how thankful I am for what you shared with me.
Yeah, it was really interesting because when Mario first asked to me, I thought of, oh my God, do I have to do a curriculum? Because I can't, I'm not a teacher that way. Because everything is more from at home, it's more experiential.
And so we've experimented with some slips, what kind of surface works well. A burnished, shiny surface is preferred. Just kind of spending time in her studio. We got the fire going in the winter, the doors open in the summer. Trying different forms. We ordered some custom decals, and they're like fired on. So do we fire them before we do the first fire, and do we fire them the second time?
And what photo imagery sticks to what Pueblo clay surface? Other people have tried this.
Yeah.
For us, though, it was a totally new experience, and so it took us a long time to understand what we were trying to do, right?
And making notes and going back to the drawing board when nothing stuck. But we had plenty to talk about in between the working time. We'd be like, oh yeah, we need to do this. Back to work.
Yeah, and we started using our own designs, and that was very interesting and exciting for me. Okay, so remember those pictures you saw at the beginning? This is where things start to make kind of sense of the photos beforehand. This one, I made 3 large burlap sculptures, and they're now being shown in Austin, Texas, in a collaborative show I'm having with my daughter, Eliza, who does paintings. Her paintings are in the back wall, and I called these sculptures. This sculpture is 19 from the head to the toe. It's 19 feet. And I have to tell you this. Margarita is showing you a picture of my studio. When I started working on these large sculptures, I had forgotten that I'd have to take them out of the studio, right? And so one night I woke up thinking, how am I going to do that? And so what basically ended up happening, we knocked down part of the studio wall so that we could install a French door so that the pieces could come in and out more easily. So because they're big, and these pieces are called are healers from some other place, and I named them because during COVID, I think everybody needed to heal, and they were very instrumental in bringing these women, young women, older women together to talk and visit and exchange ideas, and they just seemed right to be called healers from some other place. I always, no matter what material I use, I'm always finding ways to incorporate clay, which is basically my anchor, into the pieces. So, yeah, hey, that's a good idea. Parts of them are made out of clay. The balls on this bowl that he's holding. He's got a ring that's made out of clay. The other sculptures have different elements to them as well, made out of clay. Yeah.
You have the studio dog.
Oh, and there's the dog. There's Merle. Merle looks a little bit younger there, but yeah.
So one of the times that we were working together, I helped her sew a few things for these sculptures. We were able to participate in an exhibition that talked about working together at Millicent Rogers Museum in 2023 to 2024 up in Taos. So it was the two figures
At that point.
at that point.
Yeah.
And then I did an installation in one of the rooms up there. So this is just kind of showing that we were able to bring our work together. And so I gave her some of my, I make these like 21st century shards, and I gave her some of mine to throw into her sculptures, and she gave me some of her clay beads to put in my installation. And I really like that part of it.
This was the first piece I did, and that's a picture you saw at the very beginning. I wanted to incorporate that into the slideshow so that you could see how they looked at the very end of this huge experiment that lasted 3 years, I think. Yeah, this experience of gather and making these sculptures from recycled material, and in fact, this particular piece is filled, the legs especially, are filled with thousands of Walmart bags. You know those nasty Walmart bags that you don't know what to do with and you keep collecting thinking, oh, I'm going to do something with this. I started stuffing the sculptures with them. So they're filled, these pieces are completely made out of repurposed materials. As far as the clay goes, I did an installation about 12, 15 years ago, and I don't know why I did this. I made 8,500 beads, out of clay, and that was part of my my art piece. And so when they came home, they were 8,500 beads everywhere. And so I started using them. And so what's happening for me is that I am going back to these cultural teachings where you do not waste anything. You are mindful of the resources around you, and you take care of those resources, and you keep using them over and over again as much as you can. And I think that's kind of sustainability is really important, especially in the world we live now. And so the beads around this woman's neck are from that installation I did with the 8,500 beads, and I still have a lot of beads left.
You still have 8,300 beads left.
Right. Yeah. And this piece, I think, was like, did I tell you how long it was? About 17 feet.
So that the right side is at Millicent. And then we're at our favorite place, the photo archive on the left, on a really cold day.
Yeah. Was that the last of our, oh gosh, now we have to, we have to talk about this one. I made this vessel, and Margarita has been giving me information and being I'm learning from Margarita about the photo imagery process on clay, and so I made this vessel, and I polished it with a river rock that my mother gave me, and so that the surface would be slick enough so that the material, the photo imagery would stick onto the surface. And so in this case, it did not. And that's what she was talking about earlier, where you're doing research and you find out that something works one time and then it doesn't the next time. And she sort of put me solo. This was my first step into doing this process solo, and I was very disappointed that it didn't work. But thanks to Margarita, she's going to show me how to fix the process. And see, you can see how some of it stuck. I don't know why it didn't stick.
I don't either.
But we're going to keep trying. And even more than thinking this as a failure, what this does for me is just, for both of us, I think, is just helps us to realize how much more we can do together, the kinds of time we can spend together, and that sense of creativity toward this clay process, and what it allows us to do and how we proceed with that.
That's it. That's all we got.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. It was so awesome to learn about some of this work that you've been doing, which is incredibly innovative and exciting. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, we do have a question back here. Sorry, I gotta walk around.
Oh, thank you. Should I stand up? I will, just because I'm pretty tall.
Hi.
My name's Lydia. I work for the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum, so I'm fairly familiar with your guys' work, big fan. I was wondering if earlier you mentioned the importance of passing on traditions and knowledge to the youth in your communities, and I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit more about what your thoughts were on the ways you saw or you think of being as the most valuable or like the most fruitful ways of passing on this knowledge.
So I feel like it could look a number of ways, and what the kids are actually absorbing is going to range from kid to kid. Each experience, someone will be like, that's a vivid memory that I remember 20 years later, and another one that might be there would be like, I remember that. So I feel like variety is helpful, and then just trying a variety of things, whether it's one-to-one or group setting, or I'm also a teacher, so I'm like, what are the best ways that we all absorb this knowledge? And transparency, being like, this is important, and this kind of sharing knowledge it almost went away at one point, and we don't want that to happen. So, I mean, I have an 11-year-old, and sometimes I'm like, maybe I need to push harder on her, but I feel like you push harder on your kids and be like, no, they'll like back off and not want to absorb it. But it's like this strangers' kids are like, oh, I love all what you're sharing with me. So I like teaching in all the ways, whether it's through institutions, through organizations, or through like workshops, or just relationship.
Mm-hmm. That picture where Margarita's daughter, Solana, and my two granddaughters were gathering clay, I think was monumental for me in the sense that I knew how important that was, because I've been in a situation where I've been with my elders going to gather clay, and how important it was for me to see that process and see these women, oh my God, these very strong women, my mother and my aunties, knowing exactly what they needed to do, and gathering people up and making sure we had the right amount of shovels, and going the truck and going to this spot, and then stopping everything to acknowledge the earth through our prayers. And that is imprinted in me in ways that I can't really articulate, but they live inside me every time I touch the clay, or every time I gather the clay. I remember those things. And so for me to have my granddaughters understand that what their satya does is that she goes into the mountain to gather clay is priceless. And so I think doing that kind of exercise or adventure or whatever people would title it as, I think is really says something about who we are as people sharing that information. Russell Sanchez, who's also a wonderful potter, was stated that the children in the community did not learn by instruction, they learned by observation. And when that observation is in kindness and in consistency, I think that goes a long way. And I think that's when it gets burned into your heart. So, yeah, and I don't, I'm not a teacher, but I know that when you do that with people, even if they're older, that goes a long way to answer your question.
And I'm guessing you went multiple times and did that same process over and over. And
Yeah.
I think, that continual repetition of it, like, oh, we're doing this again.
Exactly.
Oh, I noticed this about this time that I didn't notice last time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Thank you. I think we have another question up here. Did you have a question, sir?
Thank you. I'm short, so I'll stand up too. I am fabulously interested in your process with this printing on clay. And so just more, please elaborate. Like, how many pieces do you have? Have you saved them? Have you transferred on to the other side? I mean, I'm interested in your investigation, anything you have to say.
Well, I'm realizing that when we first when I was first introduced to this process, I right away I go to these like ideas of grandeur and big monumental pieces with photo imagery all over them. That we haven't gotten there yet. I don't know if I ever will, but then when I started realizing that, thank you for doing that, this takes a whole lot of time and experimentation. And we first started off with little clay plates, and we'd mark them up. Oh, this is Santa Clara clay, polished. This is micaceous clay, added, polished. We'd go through the whole. Then we sort of gave that up, and we just started winging it because every firing was different.
Well, and then I was like, what does this mean again? Like, I feel like I got lost in my notes and notations, and I'm like, I don't know. We just know it needs to be shiny.
Yeah, and again, going back to that, it's not about the instruction, but just observing what we did. And so we've been spending a lot of time just experimenting with the designs that'll fit on polished pottery, and how thick that polish should be, and how well polished it should be in order to take on the image. And so we started looking at different kinds of slips that we gathered and that I had in my studio, and we went through all of them. Some of them were white. We used, there is, in Tewa, there's a word on pi where it is a red slip, and then there's that is this with a little bit of micaceous sprinkled in. Here, this is Antorun, which is really, and I don't know I don't know what it is, but you can gather it in this area. It's white, and long time ago they used to use it to polish the moccasins. I put it on. It didn't work. It didn't stick. The photo imagery didn't stick. But everything is possible when we're in the studio. So even though it doesn't work, we're still trying it. So that's I think our biggest thing right now is just continuing to experiment with what, the clays and what it will or won't do with this photo imagery. I made a piece recently that was in the Texas show that was 9 feet high, and I wanted to have the photo imagery represented somehow, some way. So for the head of this large sculpture, I opened the back of the head and I placed something very similar to this in the back of the head. So you see a face, and then you go around to the sculpture in the back, and you can see the photo imagery in the back of this person's head as if it's in the inner thoughts of this person. So again, we're finding ways to play with this, in creatively play with what we have.
Wait 1 second. Let me get you this just so folks on YouTube can hear.
Thanks. What are the transfers made of?
So they come from a commercial ceramic transfer company, ceramic and or glass that we order online. So people often use them for commercial ceramics or mainstream ceramics, I guess you could say. They are fired on. It's a third firing usually on ceramics, and at a much lower temperature than, which is why it kind of works for this, because we can only fire so high with natural clay, and so we're like on that line of how hot is too hot.
Do you know what the transfers, what material is the color of the transfer? Is it a clay? Is it a glass? Is it a powder?
So it works like it's called water slide transfer process. I believe it's some sort of mineral that is able to withstand that. So some sort of iron oxide or commercial pigment that's used in also to make glazed colors. So they sell like a matte option as well as a flux option. The flux adds a glossy component, but the temperature we're working at does not go there.
And this particular image was at one point a monotype print that was then made into decal. And so we were pulling not only archival images, but also the monotype, in this case, that I did, and other designs that I had created.
Okay, 1 second.
A quick question. So did you fire these in an electric kiln? Or
Yes.
Did you, okay.
Our next big hope, and that's a big one, is that we're going to experiment when it gets warmer and not as windy, to fire a pit fire, in the traditional Pueblo way, to see if that's going to work. We'll let you know.
Yeah.
We don't know yet.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great question. Is there any way that we can sort of follow your progress? Do you all share about it or not yet?
Well, we haven't done it yet, but as soon as we do it, we can, I guess we could send you guys a note. I mean, I don't know how that works. So.
I share like really small snippets in my Instagram story on social media, but I don't explain anything. It's just pictures.
Yeah, but we're also, because we've been so generously given
A grant.
money and like a grant to do this with Grounded in Clay. So we will probably be giving that information to the SAR so that we could make sure that it's posted somehow. Right, Alicia? We can do that? Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, a culmination of a work from both of us would be, it's always the goal. We're just getting there.
Well, after exploring all this and playing with everything, both of you, I'm wondering if you're feeling like your relationship to the material is changing and, I don't know, going in a different direction, learning the clay, the different clays themselves. If almost your relationship to the clay is changing in some way.
For me, because I've been working in clay for quite a while, I am always experimenting, and so there's one thing that remains constant, is that I am a Pueblo woman who has been given this gift to create with clay, and I am not a traditional Pueblo clay worker, and I'm often doing very experimental things, and so my relationship with the clay is still pretty constant because it goes back to the clay pit. It goes back to those basic things that I learned from the people I come from. And so that will never change. And as long as I have that, I feel that I've been, I can experiment, and that I can figure out ways how to express myself as a contemporary Native person. And so that is not going to change. And so I like that idea of working with this particular type of clay, and the clays I find otherwise in northern New Mexico and wherever I travel, and using them in that respectful, I'm aware of that resource. And so I don't know, it emboldens me to look to see what I can do with it. And I like that. I really like that.
Are you learning things about the clay that you
All the time. I mean, with that bowl, I couldn't believe that it didn't pick up the photo imagery. Like, I wanted it to work so bad, and it didn't. And then it was great because Margarita said, well, let's try something else with that same bowl, because you can't just throw that bowl away or put it outside. You spend so much time with this material, or I spend so much time with this material, that I become very much invested. And so those kinds of real basic things don't ever change for me.
Ditto. But I notice I'm gathering more natural clay and pigments than I have before, because I'm like, well, what does this do? So my collection of clay in jars is really expanding, and I need to do something about it. But this medium is so vast and broad that it's lifelong learning. And yeah.
Are there any more questions? No. Do you have another?
Well, I had another question. And it's about trash.
Oh, you want trash talk now?
Right. Well, I've often thought that we shouldn't even have that word,
Yeah, right.
because
I know.
it, I don't know, kind of compels us to have trash. And so I was wondering about the children. Do they, I Are they learning a different way of relating to what some of us think of as trash, in terms of always being recycled, always, there's a use for everything? You know, do they, I mean, your children, do they, how are they doing with this thing?
You know, I can only tell you for my grandchildren is that I'm always emphasizing, you know, in the studio I have bins that have recycle, I have recycling bins in my studio. And so there are little nuggets of information that I am giving them all the time. Like my granddaughter will come into the studio and I'll ask her, can you pack this vessel? And I'll show her how. Just that moment of relating to the clay, she becomes more aware of what it holds for her. Whether she becomes a potter or not, I have no control over that. But when she realizes that clay has that much importance to her in our culture, then she becomes aware of her surroundings, her environment, what you do. And I'm always giving them little pieces of information about that. And I can't say what happens in the school that they go to. I can't, you know, I have no control over what happens in the communities, because I think we're still pretty much consuming and discarding at an incredibly dangerous rate. And part of what I can do is make things out of discarded materials that show people that, oh, this isn't trash. You can do something with this. You can make something else out of it. All you have to do is be creative. And our ancestors during the 30s did that. And I think that would be a really great way to teach kids in our communities. You know, have projects that you make something out of repurposed material. I think that would be an incredible thing to do. I don't know at this point if that's happening at any kind of scale. I don't know that. Yeah. Which is, you know, that's a whole other topic and consideration. Right? I mean, we, in some... Right. Yeah, and what happens to me now is, like, I was in Costa Rica, and I was walking down the street, and I saw this gasket. And I picked it up, and I brought it home, and it's in one of these large sculptures. And it's like I'm trained to look around to see where I can find things to reuse.
Do you think your ancestors did that in their own way?
Oh, of course they did. Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did that. Because, like, my mother, well, was always telling me when I was growing up, you don't waste things. I remember my mother was driving, and I was sitting next to her, and I must have been about 9 years old, and a truck stopped, and it was full of wood. And when the truck moved forward after the stop sign, a piece of wood fell out. And she said, she looked at me, and it was like, pick it up. Go get out of the truck and pick it up. And so she, you know, I was a little embarrassed to do that. Because I thought, well, we should just drive around it. That wood that I picked up that was dropped off from this truck, you know, gave us 2 hours of heat that night. So, I mean, it's just, it's practical information.
Another question. One more. Here we go.
On that note, I
I think that there are older generations that look at things that we discard today and think resource. This is something I can capture the gasket, and I know that that will play a role in something in the future, or a piece of wood, or all kinds of things that today we just keep moving on and buying more, as opposed to considering what we're throwing away as a resource.
Yeah, it's very true. And I think what this whole project with these burlap pieces has taught me is that exactly what you're saying. I mean, we need to rethink how we consume, and also what we are thinking is trash. And I say that for all of us, not just the larger society, but in our own communities, because we've been colonized to think that it's okay to throw out stuff.
Okay. All right. On that note, we will all walk away from this being more mindful about consumption, which I think is a great message to take away. So thank you, and thank you both so much. This was wonderful. A recording of this talk will go up on our YouTube channel as soon as it has a little bit of touch-up. We will also be having our next event will be next Wednesday. That one will be at 10:30. That's Lia Mata Fragua and Savannah Morales. So if you haven't already signed up for that, please do. We have in the back Danette and Alex. If you want to sign up with them, they're happy to sign you up today. Thank you so much. Have a good day, and please take some food with you as you leave.